Part 1. Forbidden Philosophy. Countries where Nietzsche is banned. Welcome to Shadow Psychology. You are about to enter a realm of forbidden knowledge that governments and institutions have tried to suppress for over a century. What if I told you that the philosophical ideas we're exploring today are considered so dangerous that they remain officially banned in multiple countries? That reading certain works by Friedrich Nietzsche could literally get you arrested in some parts of the world? This isn't conspiracy theory. This is the shocking reality of how threatened systems of power become when confronted with ideas that challenge their very foundation. The official list includes at least 15 countries where Nietzsche's works have been either fully banned or heavily censored. These aren't obscure nations. They include powerful governments and major religious states that recognize the revolutionary potential in Nietzsche's philosophy. From Russia's historical bans to certain Middle Eastern nations where his books remain prohibited today, the pattern is clear. When you question the moral foundations of society, society fights back with everything it's got. The very existence of these bans proves Nietzsche's central point that what we call morality is often just the weaponized will to power of the dominant group. Consider the historical context. When Nietzsche first published Beyond Good and Evil, it was immediately banned in several European countries. The Russian Empire banned it for its anti-Christian sentiment. The Austro-Hungarian Empire prohibited its distribution for undermining moral values. Even today, in several conservative religious states, owning Nietzsche's works can lead to serious legal consequences. Why? Because his philosophy doesn't just criticize it, fundamentally dismantles the psychological underpinnings of traditional power structures. The modern censorship is more sophisticated but equally pervasive. Algorithms shadow ban content discussing Nietzsche's most controversial ideas. Academic institutions quietly discourage deep engagement with his works. Publishing houses self-censor translations to avoid controversy. This isn't just about protecting religious sensibilities. It's about maintaining control over how people think about power, morality, and their own potential. The system doesn't want you to ask whether your values are truly yours or merely inherited programming. Your journey into forbidden philosophy begins with this realization. If an idea is dangerous enough to be banned, it's probably powerful enough to transform your life. The weak seek comfort in approved thoughts. The strong recognize that truth often lies in what authorities fear most. As we continue this exploration, remember, you're not just learning philosophy. You're accessing knowledge that literal governments have tried to erase from human consciousness. The transformation starts when you stop accepting boundaries on thought and begin exploring why those boundaries were erected in the first place. If you're ready to cross the line into territory marked forbidden, this journey has only begun. The most dangerous truths, the ones that can truly set you free, always lie just beyond the signs that say, "Keep out." Part 2. Nietzsche's shocking prophecies about the 21st century. What if the chaos and confusion of our modern world was not only predicted, but meticulously described by a 19th century philosopher? Nietzsche's writings contain prophecies so accurate about our current reality that they seem to have been written yesterday rather than 150 years ago. His concept of the last man perfectly captures the spirit of our age, a society obsessed with comfort, safety, and trivial entertainment, where great ambitions have been replaced by the endless pursuit of minor pleasures and the avoidance of anything truly challenging. Consider how Nietzsche predicted the collapse of traditional values and the rise of what he called nihilism, the state where the highest values devalue themselves. Look at our current cultural landscape: declining religious participation, political disillusionment, the crisis of meaning in an age of abundance. Nietzsche didn't just foresee this. He explained why it was inevitable once humanity realized that the old foundations of meaning were human creations rather than divine revelations. His prophecy extends to our digital lives, where social media creates what he would recognize as the ultimate herd mentality, endless conformity masked as individuality. Perhaps most startling is Nietzsche's prediction about what would follow nihilism. He foresaw that the void left by disappearing values would be filled by what he called the will to nothingness, the preference for willing nothing rather than not willing at all. We see this everywhere today. In radical political movements empty of positive vision, in destructive social trends, in the embrace of conspiracy theories that provide simple answers to complex problems. Nietzsche understood that humanity cannot tolerate meaninglessness for long and would rather embrace destructive false certainties than face the terrifying freedom of creating new values. The most dangerous of Nietzsche's prophecies concerns what he called the revaluation of all values, the necessary destruction of old moral systems to make way for new ones. He predicted this process would be violent, disorienting, and would create what we now recognize as our culture wars. Every political battle, every social conflict, every generational divide in our current society reflects this ongoing revaluation. The system tries to convince us these conflicts are problems to be solved, but Nietzsche reveals they're actually symptoms of a necessary transformation, too terrifying for most to acknowledge openly. Your awakening to these prophecies changes everything. The confusion of modern life ceases to be random and becomes intelligible as part of a pattern Nietzsche mapped over a century ago. The economic uncertainty, political polarization, spiritual seeking. These aren't signs of societal failure, but of Nietzsche's predicted transition between eras. The weak see chaos. Those who understand Nietzsche recognize the birth pangs of a new humanity struggling to emerge. The transformation continues as we realize that Nietzsche didn't just predict our present, he provided the tools to navigate it. His philosophy offers what might be the only coherent response to the crises he foresaw: the creation of new values based on life affirmation rather than denial, on strength rather than weakness, on reality rather than illusion. If you're ready to understand not just what's happening to our world, but why it's happening, and how you can not only survive but thrive in this new reality, the journey continues. The most shocking revelations are still ahead. Part 3. The dangerous truth about religion and morality. Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead remains one of the most misunderstood and controversial statements in philosophical history. Mainstream interpreters often soften its meaning, presenting it as a metaphorical commentary on secularization. But the raw, dangerous truth is that Nietzsche meant this literally and radically. The concept of God had ceased to be psychologically viable for modern humanity, and the consequences would be catastrophic. What he saw, and what religious institutions desperately try to suppress, is that much of what we call morality is actually psychological warfare disguised as virtue. Christianity in particular represented for Nietzsche what he called slave morality, a brilliant, systematic inversion of natural values where weakness became good, strength became evil, and resentment became righteousness. The meek shall inherit the earth wasn't spiritual wisdom, but what he termed the revenge of the powerless, a psychological strategy where those who couldn't achieve genuine power created a moral system that made their weakness appear virtuous. This isn't abstract philosophy. It's an explanation for why so many moral systems glorify poverty, suffering, and self-denial while treating ambition, wealth, and self-expression with suspicion. The evidence surrounds us. Look at how religious institutions historically condemned wealth while accumulating massive fortunes. Observe how moral systems that preach humility often produce leaders drunk with spiritual arrogance. Notice how religions that champion compassion frequently justify incredible cruelty toward outsiders. Nietzsche's genius was recognizing this not as hypocrisy, but as the inevitable outcome of value systems built on what he called life denial rather than life affirmation. The cross itself became for Nietzsche the ultimate symbol of this inversion glorifying suffering and sacrifice rather than strength and joy. Your awakening to this truth begins with a simple but dangerous exercise. Trace any moral belief you hold back to its foundation and ask, who benefits from this value? Does this moral principle empower me to live more fully, or does it make me easier to control? Does it encourage growth and self-overcoming, or does it promote guilt and self-limitation? The patterns you'll discover will shock you. Much of what you've been taught is virtuous actually serves to keep you timid, predictable, and dependent on external validation from religious or moral authorities. The contemporary suppression of Nietzsche's religious criticism reveals how threatened these systems remain. Universities often avoid deep engagement with his anti-religious arguments. Religious organizations actively work to discredit his ideas. Even secular society maintains what Nietzsche would recognize as Christian morality without Christianity, preserving the life-denying values while discarding their theological foundation. This proves his point. The system doesn't care whether you believe in God, only that you continue serving the moral framework that makes you manageable. The transformation occurs when you stop seeing morality as something to be discovered and start recognizing it as something to be created. The weak accept handed-down values. The strong understand that genuine morality begins when you have the courage to say, like Nietzsche's Zarathustra, "My brother, if you have a virtue and it is your own virtue, you have it in common with no one." This is the ultimate heresy against all systems of control, the realization that your highest moral duty isn't to follow rules, but to create values worthy of your highest self. If you're ready to continue this dangerous exploration of how moral systems actually function and how to break free from their invisible chains, the path forward requires courage few possess. But the reward is what Nietzsche called the great liberation, the moment you stop being a moral patient and become a moral physician, capable of diagnosing sick values and prescribing stronger, healthier alternatives. Part 4. The Philosophy That Led to Catastrophe. Nietzsche's ideas did not emerge in a vacuum. They were forged in a Europe simmering with revolutionary tension, and their impact would echo through some of the darkest chapters of human history. It is an uncomfortable and often suppressed truth that Nietzsche's philosophy, often stripped of its nuance and twisted into dogma, became a source of ideological fuel for totalitarian movements. The Nazis, in particular, systematically cherry-picked and distorted his concepts, especially the Übermensch and will to power, to legitimize their ideology of racial superiority and ruthless expansion. But the story is more complex than simple cause and effect. Nietzsche himself despised German nationalism and anti-Semitism, calling them diseases of the people. He would have been horrified by the Third Reich's interpretation of his work. Yet, the very boldness of his language, his call to live dangerously, his rejection of equality, his vision of a higher humanity, made his thought vulnerable to appropriation. This raises a chilling question. Can a philosophy meant to liberate the individual instead empower the monstrous? The same patterns of distortion recur today. Far-right extremists and radical online movements continue to misuse Nietzschean terms to justify authoritarianism and social Darwinism. They ignore his emphasis on self-overcoming and cultural creation, reducing his rich thought to a weaponized slogan. At the same time, Nietzsche was also fiercely critical of socialism and Marxism, predicting they would lead to tyranny in the name of equality. He warned against the last man, the comfortable passive conformist, whom he saw as the endpoint of both unbridled capitalism and collectivist utopianism. This dual opposition to both the radical left and the nationalist right is why Nietzsche remains so controversial. He offers no easy political allegiance. His philosophy challenges all ideologies that herd people into categories, that promise salvation through systems, or that outsource the responsibility of becoming who you are. Understanding this history is not about discrediting Nietzsche. It is about recognizing the responsibility that comes with powerful ideas. The same pen that can sketch a vision of human greatness can also, in the wrong hands, draft justifications for oppression. This is the shadow side of philosophical radicalism, the risk that the tools meant for your liberation may be sharpened into weapons for another's domination. If you are willing to confront this unsettling legacy, to explore how ideas can be both luminous and dangerous, you are ready to move beyond simplistic readings and grapple with philosophy's real-world power. The journey into Nietzsche's thought demands not just intellectual curiosity, but moral vigilance. Part 5. Why They Still Fear Him Today. The Hidden Censorship. More than a century after his death, Nietzsche's voice still echoes with the disruptive power that modern systems struggle to contain. This isn't the overt censorship of book burnings or state bans. It's a subtler, more pervasive form of control that operates through algorithmic filtering, academic sanitization, and cultural misinterpretation. Social media platforms quietly shadow ban discussions of his most challenging ideas, not because they explicitly violate rules, but because they challenge the conformist underpinnings of digital herd mentality. Educational institutions teach him as a historical artifact rather than a living philosophical threat, draining his concepts of their transformative potential and reducing them to safe academic exercises. The establishment fears Nietzsche today for the same reasons they feared him in the 19th century. His philosophy fundamentally undermines the psychological foundations of control systems. In an age that worships safety and equality as uniformity, Nietzsche's celebration of danger and individuality remains deeply subversive. When society prioritizes comfort over growth and conformity over creativity, his call to embrace suffering as necessary for transformation becomes dangerous. The system doesn't mind you studying philosophy as history. What it fears is you applying it to your life, questioning your values, and becoming someone who can't be easily managed or predicted. This hidden censorship manifests most powerfully in how Nietzsche's ideas are systematically misinterpreted. The Übermensch becomes a superhero rather than a metaphor for self-overcoming. The will to power is reduced to domination rather than understood as the drive toward self-mastery. Eternal recurrence becomes a metaphysical theory rather than a psychological test for authentic living. These distortions aren't accidental. They're defense mechanisms that allow society to engage with Nietzsche's ideas without confronting their truly dangerous implications. It's the difference between reading about fire and actually playing with matches. The ultimate reason Nietzsche remains threatening is that his philosophy can't be co-opted by any political or ideological movement without betraying its core principles. The left can't claim him because he rejected collectivist morality. The right can't own him because he despised nationalism and anti-Semitism. Spiritual movements can't appropriate him because he attacked otherworldly religions. He stands as a permanent rebel against all systems that would use ideology to limit human potential, which makes him dangerous to everyone who profits from human limitation. Your encounter with Nietzsche's authentic thought represents the final frontier of intellectual freedom. Beyond this point, you're no longer consuming philosophy, you're practicing it. The transformation occurs when you stop looking for answers and start creating your own questions, when you cease following moral codes and begin crafting your own values. This is what the system ultimately fears. Not that you'll read Nietzsche, but that you'll understand him. Not that you'll study his ideas, but that you'll live them. The journey through Nietzsche's philosophy doesn't end with knowledge. It begins with a decision to become someone that current systems can neither comprehend nor control.